to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So can I have a motion to open the meeting?
Motion. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, new business. Appointment of Newbury's nominee to the Whittier/NECC School Building Committee. This is something that Tracy and I went to a month ago. We need to assign someone or appoint someone to do this before September 1st to be in tune with the whole process of MSBC and startup. If you read the newspaper, I think Mike Colburn is doing it for Salisbury because it seemed to make sense to him. He was also on the Triton Municipal Building Committee. And Patrick and I have talked, so I would make the motion to nominate Patrick Heffernan to be that person on the school committee building. So I make that motion.
I'll second it. I'll second it.
So, any discussion?
Thank you for serving.
Yeah, it makes sense because again, Mike's on there and I'll see him and it's gonna be a lot of, not the same issues, but at least similar issues and probably a lot of the same players, so yeah, happy to do it.
That may evolve to be a pretty large team because it's 11 communities and at least 11 members and there'll be more members doing other things. And at the last meeting, I said to the public, if you're interested in joining this building committee, send your resume. To date, 0 resumes.
Okay.
So thank you, Patrick.
Happy to do it.
Vote.
And next is,
Nope, we gotta vote.
oh, we didn't vote. I'm
Nope,
sorry.
not
All in
yet.
favor?
Aye.
In favor of it.
Okay. Next.
Appointment of, next is appointment of full-time police officer Kevin Morales. There was a letter in your package from Chief Fisher explaining the situation. It's a request to appoint him as a full-time police officer. If you read the letter, you'll see he's very qualified, he's very certified, he's fluent in Spanish. He's had some other training other than this, which is good. College campus training, automotive technician training. He's done a complete background investigation was done by Newbury Human Resources. And would you like to add anything to that?
I will. So when you say his experience as a municipal police officer, so like in a town, is very limited. So he will have to have a lot of field training when it comes to that. But he does in fact have all the certifications. He's passed all of the qualifications for the background check and everything. But it will be a full FTO with us. So he's not going to solve one of our massive needs, immediately. But I'm glad that we have at least somebody in the pipe because we still have, if this gets appointed, we'll still have 2 openings for full-time officers.
Shortage went from 25% to 17%.
If this appointment goes through, correct.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we've been struggling this summer.
Okay, so I would like to have
Motion to appoint.
Second.
any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you.
And here, I thought you came for the presentation.
Tell me to stay, I will.
Nice try, Lisa.
I
Okay,
wondered why she was here, I wasn't really sure.
Door open for the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Good.
Thank you.
last is a public property use request form by the First Parish Newbury Food Pantry requesting to hang a banner at the Upper Green backstop from August 6th to September 7th. I think they specified, starting August 16th, which is this weekend, to September 7th, 12 noon. So, thank you.
I move to hang a banner at the Upper Green backstop as requested by the Newbury Food Pantry.
Second.
Any discussion?
Why they wanna hang the banner and, will there be anybody there to clean up?
It's just hanging the banner.
All they asked
We
for is to
won't be
clean the banner.
serving.
Okay. 'Cause I'm sorry that I didn't make the Purple Heart, I wasn't feeling well, but I understood that the geese have been having their way with the Upper Green.
So
Yeah.
this is to hang a banner on the backstop of the Upper Green to advertise the concert to take place at Maudsley Center on September 6th.
That's right, thank you.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Select board training session. Introducing Lisa Mead.
Mr. Chair. So
Lisa,
every,
does this take the place of the mass conflict?
no, you have to,
I just
have to
wanted to
do
get,
that on
I
your
wanted to
note
get you to
every
say it.
couple of years. I can't do that.
I know that.
Although when it first started, there's so many people had to take it. We used to go around and do the whole town, all the employees.
I can remember.
So every couple of years, the town administrator and whoever the chair is typically ask us to come run through some high-level basics of the governing statutes and bylaws and whatever for the board. And so that's what I'm here to do tonight. And I'll just have you know that I start off with our little plovers here.
I love that.
Most of which have fledged now, I hope.
Do they?
Did you say they had like a second coming sometimes? Okay.
So, the overarching controlling laws that govern the board and the town of Newbury is Chapter 460 of the Acts of 2008, which established a selectman administrative form of government in the town of Newbury, and Chapter 447 of the Acts of 2008, an act increasing the membership of the board of selectmen in the town of Newbury. Of course, prior to that, it was 3 members, and now it's 5 members. Additionally, the select board in 2019 adopted a code of ethics. And then we have the open meeting law, chapter 38, section 19 to 25, public records law, and the conflict of interest law that govern basically your general actions. There we go. So, let me just see where this says that I am. I think I
Sad
skipped,
talk, I was around
did I
then.
skip a page? There we go. So, in 2008, the town voted to move from a 3-person to a 5-member board of selectmen. And just as a reminder, the board may only act as a whole. So, there may be times when you hear from constituents and they say, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? And you may be able to, make a phone call or whatever, but really the board acts as one whole group, not individually. And so the board can't make decisions on their own without a vote of the board. And the members should bring matters back to the board to realize the full authority in case they actually want to take action. And at times, the board sits as other legal entities. So you're the local licensing board. Sometimes you're the special permit granting authority, which, just as an aside, Martha and Kristen are going to be talking about in the future because we're working on the zoning bylaw as well. So those are other hats that you wear as a member of the select board. Just as an update also, you may have read that the state law changed with regards to liquor licenses. And I just sent a notice to Tracy today, we just did a report on this, but in the budget that the governor passed, or signed and was passed, it allows communities that adopt at town meeting the new law, 12A, or 12D, excuse me, 138 12D, that if a person has a wine and malt beer license, it can be converted to a full liquor license. It still has to go through a process and everything, but it doesn't divide your liquor and full mart. If you're allowed 10 in town, you're still only allowed 10. And it doesn't mean that you can give that wine and malt beer to somebody else. Once the person leaves or transfers, it goes back to the wine and malt beer, but that does allow a movement up to full liquor. So those may be coming to you if town meeting adopts the change in the statute.
So it's grandfathered in from the beginning, as what you're saying, wine and malt liquor.
So it's grandfathered in as a number, but if you transfer up, it just sits there, nobody gets it, you can't give it to somebody else, because your full number stays the same. So that's what happens, but town meeting has to adopt the provision of the law, just FYI. The town administrator's Act was adopted in 2008. We've done a couple of tweaks to it here and there, mostly to clarify it. And it basically moved from allowing one member of the board to manage the town to hiring a professional to manage the town. And I say that having experience with negotiating many years with the prior chair of the board, Mr. Macheros, a long time ago, went over the Plum Island water and sewer thing when I was mayor. And at that time, basically the chair was the manager of the town. And so the Town Administrators Act got rid of that to hire a professional and have a 5-member board. The town administrator is responsible for the fiscal, prudential, and municipal affairs of the town, and including the real estate. They hire and fire personnel not otherwise designated to be appointed by the board. It reports to the board on the operations of the town and creates and administrates the budget, prosecutes and defends and compromises litigation, manages town property, and reports to the select board regarding wrongdoing of employees, and to name a few of their authority. The board, of course, is the fiscal, prudential, and policy maker of the town. Its executive branch, including the appointment of police chief and officers, town council, and others. And the board has retained the authority to adopt policies and set forth the general direction of the town, which you do on a regular basis. So here we go, there's Newman Road, Salt Marsh. So in 2019, the select board adopted a code of conduct. Basically, it was a code to remind members that they were to always act in the public interest, to comply with the laws. It governs the conduct of members, respecting the process of the board and town government. It discusses communication in and out of meetings, discusses what is to be done with confidential information, like information that you hear in executive session, which is not to be obviously passed on to anybody outside of executive session until that matter is over. To how public resources are used. For example, a board member couldn't come in and say, I'm gonna take over that office over there and use those resources or make a bunch of copies, like not allowed to do that. And it discusses respecting the independence of other boards and commissions, the planning board, the zoning board, in particular, the conservation commission, things like that. The Board of Health. So those are the general highlights of the code of conduct, and I think that you all have a copy of that. So let's talk about the open meeting law a little bit, because that probably you deal with the open meeting law more than you deal with anything else, because you're constantly meeting. So what are the basic requirements, right? So before you have a meeting, you have to have 48 hours notice, and the agenda has to be posted. What has to be posted on that agenda are items that the chair reasonably anticipates at the time of the posting of the agenda. So if Bill posts the agenda a week in advance, and then 3 days later learns that a police officer needs to be appointed and didn't know then, he can amend the agenda and make sure that that's on the agenda ahead of the meeting. You can even amend the agenda up to a couple of hours before a meeting if you didn't reasonably anticipate it at the time you originally posted. You always have to indicate what item was amended on the agenda and when it was amended, and you put there's always a note that the clerk makes at the top about the time of the amendment. But a lot of people think that, it was on the agenda, I can't have it. But the answer is you can if it wasn't reasonably anticipated. Well, whose agenda is it? And this is always the source of a lot of conversation in most of my communities. It's the chair's agenda. And however the chair decides to share the responsibilities of putting things on the agenda, ultimately, it's the chair's choice about what goes on the agenda and what doesn't go on the agenda, and frankly, even what order they are on the agenda. So the open meeting law is really clear about whose agenda it is. So just as an aside, if you have been in municipal government as long as I have, it used to be that before 2013-ish, literally on December 30th or December 31st, the clerk would post every meeting for every board or commission in a community outside their office. And those would be the postings for those meetings for the year. Didn't have to include agendas at the time, but when they redid the open meeting law in around 2013, they required you to post the agenda in advance as well. So you don't see those general postings anymore like you used to, because it doesn't do you any good.
Was it something like, if they were posting outside the office, was it like the menu outside the restaurant?
Yeah, right, exactly. But, so that was the only place it was required to be posted at the time. It was outside the clerk's office. Now you can post it online if you get approval from the Attorney General's office, which you all do as your official posting. But the only place was required was outside the clerk's office. And if you weren't open, town hall wasn't open, it wasn't open. But now it has to be someplace that's posted, that's available 24 hours, 7 days a week, so. And then minutes. Every meeting, you have to have minutes for every meeting. They have to be approved and accepted in a reasonable time frame. You can't wait 6 months to accept your your minutes. You have to do it, if you meet frequently, you have to approve minutes frequently. You should have a regular order to that. And I always like to say minutes are not a transcription of the meeting. They are an overview of what happened, who attended, what votes were taken, maybe a sampling of the discussion that happened, but they are not a transcription of the meeting. And a lot of times you see people really pouring through minutes and saying, this didn't happen and that's not reported. Well, it's not required to be, just the big items are required to be reported. The thing that everybody always trips up on is kind of a red herring. If there's any documentation that was a part of the meeting, that also has to be listed in the minutes. A lot of times people forget to do that. So the minutes have to include a list of any documents that were also received or discussed during the meeting. And what else does the open meeting law do? Well, it makes sure that you only deliberate when you're a public body in a public meeting. So what does that mean? It means that a majority or a quorum of the body cannot be having conversations about matters under the body's authority outside of a public meeting. So you're a 5-member board. If 3 of you are chatting on email about something that might be coming up on an agenda, that's a violation of the open meeting law. So a lot of times when Tracy or somebody from the town will send information out to you, it might say, do not reply all at the bottom. And that's so you don't reply all, because the problem that people run into is you get an agenda item and say somebody doesn't like an item on the agenda, they reply all and they say, that is crazy, I'm not gonna vote for that item on the agenda. And then that's a violation of the open meeting law if it goes back to everybody else.
Because it's a quorum?
Because it's a quorum.
And it's
And it's
deliberation.
outside of the public meeting.
And it's deliberation.
And it's deliberation. What is not a violation of the open meeting law anymore are site visits. So it used to be you had to post a site visit and you had to make sure it was scheduled 48 hours in advance. But now, if you had to do a site visit for one of your special permit granting authority, you can just schedule it and go. You just can't deliberate at the site. You can ask questions and take in information, but you can't deliberate. But you don't have to post it and minutes don't have to be kept of it.
Well, that's one thing that Martha did on the planning board, is before any site walk, she gave her little speech on no deliberation.
No deliberation. She knows. And then some people say, well, our telephone calls, so if I don't do an exchange on email, well, let's say Bill says, oh, I'll call Alicia and then I'll call, Patrick. And that's called a serial communication. And so you can't do that either. You can't kind of go down the row and figure out what's going on. That's called a serial communication. That's a violation of the open meeting law. What about executive session? Executive session, probably the select board, maybe the zoning or planning board if there's an appeal and litigation, and maybe the school committee if they're negotiating contracts. But the select board have more executive sessions than anybody else because you have more authority. And so if you're negotiating the price, exchange, or value of real property, you can do that in executive session. If you are negotiating contracts, employment contracts, you can do that in executive session. Not regular contracts, just employment contracts. If there's litigation and you're doing strategy, you can do that in an executive session. You can't, what you can't do in executive session, if you're thinking about litigation, it has to be something that is really like you're thinking you're actually gonna appeal something or file a lawsuit. It can't be, well, I heard that somebody was gonna sue us. That's not appropriate for executive session. Does anybody have any questions about any of the open meeting law stuff before we?
I do.
Yeah.
Open meeting law requires minutes. Recordings of meetings are not required.
That's correct.
A lot of people seem to think at times that there was a problem with a recorded meeting, that it was a violation of the open meeting law. It's not, it is not.
That's correct. So recordings aren't required and they are not minutes. And minutes are not required to be posted on a website, right? So that's the other thing. People say, oh, well, the minutes aren't on the website. That's a violation of the open meeting law. No. The open meeting law does not require you to post minutes on the website. Now, is it convenient for you and the public and all the people that work here to have minutes posted on the website? Yeah, because it's easy to say, go to the website. But you're not required to. So if you forget to put minutes on the website, it's not a violation of the open meeting law. Maybe some policy that somebody has that, inadvertently forgot or whatever, but it's not a requirement of the open meeting law.
But if we decided we didn't want to post the minutes, would people have to go through public record to request to have a copy of the minutes?
Correct. That's exactly right. They go to the town clerk or to Tracy and make a public records request for the minutes of the meeting. That's right.
Really informative to me because I thought the minutes were always required to be posted.
Yep, nope, a lot of people think that, but the answer is no, no, and no again. Okay. All right. So let's, since we're on this, the newest thing, and you all are well aware of this, that happened 2 years ago was the case Barron versus Kalenda, which basically says the following. If a body allows public comment, then it cannot discriminate against a person who is saying things they don't like. You cannot govern the content of the comment. So what I like to tell my boards is the first rule is you are not required to allow the public to comment at your meetings. Now, practically speaking, a public body, an elected public body, you might want to have the public be able to comment now and again. But you're not required to, that's my job to tell you. In fact, the chair doesn't have to let anybody else speak, except for maybe the board members when he wants to, right? But if you allow public comment, you need to tell everybody what the rules are. And they need to be consistent across the board. We're gonna have public comment at the beginning of the meeting. Everybody's gonna be allowed to speak for 2 minutes. Public comment will last no longer than 10 minutes, and you're done. That's it. This has really helped a lot of communities, frankly, who, in a lot of my smaller communities with 3-member boards of selectmen, their meetings kind of do this, like got this back and forth thing happening, and then, the select board didn't like what was happening, so that they would just cut it off and then they would move on, and meetings went forever. But now people are getting their business done more than they were before, and it wasn't like a colloquial or conversation that was happening. There's a clear public comment period. People say what they have to say, and they move on.
So I have a question on that. Our public comment, it's not on here, says, and I think we should be in our best interest to strike the language. It says that public comment, here it is. It says to receive oral communications from members of the public. Members of the public may address select board up to 3 minutes, longer with permission of the chair. Is that?
Yeah, I don't know, you shouldn't do that. I think it puts you in too much, because if you give one person permission, so I think this is an example I gave when I did my presentation on this a couple of years ago, or right after it happened. Human nature is that when somebody is saying things you like, you want to let them go on, right? And when somebody is saying things that are challenging you, you want to shut them off, right? And so allowing that discretion is going to make you fall into that trap. right?
And then we go on to say this agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes unless extended at the discretion of the chair.
And that's okay, and the reason is this, is let's say you have a really hot topic, and there are 55 people here that wanna talk on it.
Yeah,
Well, if you let everybody talk for 3 minutes, you're gonna go well longer than 15 minutes. And it may be something you wanna hear. So you can change the rules the night of the meeting, so long as you announce the change ahead of time. So everybody's treated the same, right? You need to have that flexibility, I think.
thank
Is
you.
there anything stopping us from changing that? I mean, we just read it out loud, so you just,
And you guys can
yeah.
just make it's all yours.
We can
sets
change
the
it for next
agenda?
meeting.
Yeah, you can just change it.
Do it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have any comments on that?
The only thing I want to ask is, one of the major rules is to accept the concerns from the people, and let them know that there will be no discussion on it, but to allow them to know that it could be put on a future agenda.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, obviously that's up to the chair, but I think that it's important to let people know that you're not gonna be discussing items, because then it would be outside the open meeting law, because it was on the agenda. So thank you very much, that's very important. We'll consider putting that on a future agenda. Yep. Okay, so then there's the public records law. So every written record which you keep or make or transmit as a member of the Board of Selectmen, Select Board, I gotta change that, Select Board is a public record. That's the general rule. So then there's this thing, private notes, right? What if I'm just writing my notes to myself, like I'm writing a to-do list, things I need to do for the Select Board tomorrow? That's private, that's okay. But if you bring that to a Select Board meeting and you read from it, it becomes a public document, all right? So if you read from anything at a Select Board meeting, it becomes a public document. And here's the case, there's an SJC case of the town of, it's one of the W towns on the Pike,
Weston, Wayland.
Wayland. They're always in front of the SJC for public records and open meeting law violations. And the last time they actually got reprimanded, well, they always lose, but then they got reprimanded. But they were discussing the contract of a superintendent and the review of a superintendent. Actually, it was the school committee, superintendent and the review of the superintendent. And they had all these discussions, and they had done a review, which was a private document, because of the way it was created. But one of the school committee members started to read her comments from that review. And so the newspaper asked for a copy of it. And they said, no, it's a private document because it's personnel, blah, blah, blah. But the SJC said, au contraire, you read that at a public meeting. So if you are texting with each other during a public meeting, those texts are public documents.
You shouldn't be texting during.
I'm just telling you, They're amazingly, people do that,
Yeah. So a
Texting
question.
amongst each other or texting with the public?
both.
So actually, it could be a public record of whoever
Yeah.
is texting into the select board.
That's correct,
Interesting.
that's correct.
So if, I didn't know this. So if we're at a board meeting and somebody texts me and I respond back,
If it's about, like,
if it's about what's
if
on,
Gary's texting you to see if he
What time
should
you gonna be
put-
home? Okay.
that is not about, that is not a public record, because it's not about the matter, the matter under your authority.
If someone
Right.
texted in, make sure you ask about.
That's a
blah, blah,
public
blah, blah,
record.
blah, that's public record.
That's public record.
My husband is so guilty about that, and I will text him back and say, I'm not talking to you.
There you go, that's the answer, that's the right answer.
So this notebook, if I wanted to talk to the rest of the board about something that I wrote down in this, it would
Would be-
behoove me to write it on a separate piece of paper and simply not.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Understood.
He's
Okay.
always trying to advise me.
Thank you, tell him to be quiet, leave you alone. All right,
You're not here.
so all your electronic mails, emails, any email that you send in your capacity as a select board member, that's a public record. documents that you create as part of your official position, that's public records. You send a memo to your other select board members, that's public record. All right, conflict of interest law. So this is like a high overview. Of course, you know you have to read the thing that Gretchen gives you when you get sworn in, and then you have to go take your test. General rule, do not use your official position to gain an advantage that a private citizen would not otherwise be entitled to. That is just the general rule. I'll give you a really blatant example. I'm sure I can find a couple of others. I happened to have been mayor of a city, and one day I went home for lunch and I saw a DPW worker mowing his lawn with city equipment, right, at lunch. That's a violation of the conflict of interest law, because not everybody gets to use a lawnmower from the city at lunchtime, right? So that's an example. If you had limited, let's say there were only 100 parking passes available to the citizens of the town of Newbury to park in a really special parking lot, and you used your position to get up to the front of the line, that's conflict of interest, right? So those are the kinds of things. I will tell you that if you ever have a question about the conflict of interest law, that you can talk to me and I can give you a draft opinion. And once you make sure that the facts are all correct, if you want an opinion that you can rely on, I will finalize that opinion and it gets filed with the Ethics Commission, who will then send an agreement or not. They'll say, no, you're like way off base, or yes, that's it with this tweak or whatever. And then you can rely on it moving forward. So there's always, but it's about things you haven't yet done. So it always has to be forward-looking, because the Ethics Commission is an enforcement agency. So if you've already done it, they're not going to talk to you. You can also call the attorney of the day at the Ethics Commission, but you can't rely on their advice. You have to get a written opinion in order to be able to rely on it, because what people say are the facts don't always end up being the facts when you put them in writing. And it may not be what the other person hears. So you want to make sure that the facts are really the facts of the situation. Do not take gifts over $50. That's a rule. Can't take gifts over $50. Now, if somebody comes in and says, I think you guys have been doing a fantastic job, and puts a basket of fruit down in front of the select board, you all can take that and just share it amongst everybody. If somebody were to come into the planning office downstairs and put a big basket, you know, one of those Harry and David baskets down there, and so long as Kristen didn't take it home, actually they're over there now, as long as Kristen didn't take it home and keep it to herself and shared it with everybody, you can do that. You just can't take it for yourself. So you can, people come in and bring gifts in, that's all fine. Training sessions versus trips. So you can, the town can pay for you to go to a training session somewhere and even have overnight accommodations, that's okay, you can do that, that's not a conflict. On the other hand, if the fire chief is ordering a new fire truck and the company in Minnesota offers to fly him out to Minnesota to see the fire truck and then put him up and then send him back, can't do that. And just so you know, there's a company that used to do that all the time, until all the fire chiefs finally said, we can't do this anymore. So that you cannot do. Also, you may not represent a third party before the town while you're a member of the board. And so what does that mean? It means that if you happen to know a company or work for a company that needs a permit from the planning board or the zoning board, you can't appear in front of the planning board or zoning board on behalf of that company, because that's a third party doing something before the town, so you can't do that. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. I will tell you there are a couple of exemptions to the gifts thing that came up. A lot of these exemptions came up and were kind of flushed out during COVID, particularly around first responders, because they were doing so much work and people were very appreciative of that. So I had a company that gave Red Sox tickets to the fire department. And the first thing the chief did was, what do I do with these, right? Which was a good thing. So what the chief did was he basically had a lottery, which was, we got this advice from the Ethics Commission. He basically had a lottery. Anybody that wanted the ticket put their name in. He was not allowed to do that. And then they drew from the lottery and that person got to go. So that was it, because obviously the face value of those tickets, or even the market value of those tickets, were well more than $50. And so you can do things like that if you handle it in the right way. Also, public employees are allowed to accept gifts if they're unrelated to their position, right? So if you have a longtime friend who says, I want to invite you over to this fundraiser I'm having, and I know the tickets are $500, but you don't have to pay the ticket, I'm gonna pay the ticket for you. And that friend has no work before the board or the town, you can do that. It's like taking a Christmas gift or something. You're allowed to do that. You just have to think that, make sure that that person has no business before the town and that it's like a personal relationship. There's no problem with that. Okay.
If only.
That's it. In a thumbnail.
Thank you, thank you.
You are so good about getting through this in record time.
Well, it's important to get you the big information so that you stop and ask questions about the little stuff. Okay, anybody have any other questions about any of that?
No. It's always very informative.
Super helpful, yeah.
Are we ready to go? Can I have a motion? Adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Last one out the door is a wrong
Aye.
yay.